And welcome back to Veritas. I'm Mel Fabregas. Delighted to be here with my special guest tonight, directly from Bangkok, Thailand, Eric Dubay. Eric, some people have emailed me these pictures of the bases in Antarctica, the research bases that are there, and they're showing what looks to be two suns. If we are on a flat Earth, and let's call ourselves a puddle, one of many puddles, could that other sun be another sun that belongs to another puddle? And because they're down there in the extreme, circumference of the Earth, they're able to see that?
That's one possibility for that explanation. Another is Rahu, which is another celestial body in Vedic astronomy that they said existed the same size as the sun and the moon. It's also been called the black sun. And this is the ancient explanation for eclipses. They claim that Rahu eclipses the sun and the moon, not as modern day. They claim that in solar eclipses, the moon eclipses the sun, and in lunar eclipses, they claim that the shadow of the ball Earth eclipses the moon, causing that. This one actually is provably not true, however. They say that the sun lines up with the Earth just perfectly to cast the shadow of the Earth onto the moon like 3 billiard balls in a straight line. However, many times, over 50 times in the past 500 years, it's been recorded by the Royal Astronomical Society that the sun and the moon were both visible above the horizon at the same time during an eclipse, which means they couldn't have been not even close to in a straight line. They're almost next to each other. So this explanation of the shadow of the ball Earth going onto the moon is impossible for being what the eclipse is. They also use that as a proof of the ball Earth. They say, hey, see the shadow? It's a ball. But this is impossible. So you're not seeing the shadow of the ball Earth. It's not a proof of the ball. And in fact, a better explanation is this ancient explanation of the black sun, or Rahu, which occults the sun and the moon at certain points during the phase. There's an 18-year cycle that eclipses go through, and every 18 years it repeats. So you can predict eclipses based on this geocentric flat model with Rahu, as they've been doing for thousands of years. Nowadays, they claim to be predicting it based on the billiard ball, sun, moon, and Earth lining up. But as I said, this is not happening. So this is yet another lie. And this claims of seeing Nibiru or some other celestial body very well may be this translucent dark body, the black sun, since we're not told about it. Anytime we see strange phenomenon and think it could be a second sun, it very well may be this one, the black sun.
And with all due respect to the late Zacharias Sitchin, anybody who wants to listen to his last interview, you can go to our websites right there. The fact that he had his office in Rockefeller Center in New York City makes you wonder if he's part of those cultural editors that continue to keep us in the dark. But Eric, you say the moon is self-illuminated. Why do we only see portions of the moon during the various moon phases?
Yeah, they say that the cause of the moon's phases is the reflected sunlight hitting it. But you can prove that the light of the moon is totally different from the light of the sun. The effect it has on foods and plants is different. The actual temperature of the light is different. So if you're in the sun, of course, in the shade, it's cooler than in the sunlight. But in the moonlight, it's cooler in the moonlight than it is in the shade. So if you go in the moon shade, temperature goes up. So it couldn't possibly be reflected sunlight. Otherwise, it would be warm, just like the sunlight is warm. So it's casting its own light. The phases are a function of the moon itself, and it's provably a translucent flat object, not a opaque ball, as they claim the moon is. If the moon was a ball, first of all, you'd be able to see different faces from different areas on Earth. So if you're at the Arctic or the equator or the Antarctic, you should be seeing different features because you're looking at a different face of the moon from there. However, no matter where you are on Earth, you'll see exactly the same face, the same man on the moon, the same rabbit will always be there, but it'll be tilted 360 degrees at various inclinations because the moon actually turns like a wheel as it goes around us. And that's another proof they use of their ball model. They say in the north hemisphere, the moon is right side up, and in the south hemisphere, it's upside down. So that's proof that we're on a ball. But as I said, it's not so simple that it's just right side up in one hemisphere, upside down in the other hemisphere, but rather it's always turning. So you can find pictures of it at all inclinations, not just two opposite inclinations. So this is one proof that the moon is not a sphere. They say that the moon's a sphere and it rotates as well as the Earth, but since we only see the one face, their excuse is the moon rotates the opposite direction the Earth does, and it's perfectly synced so that when the Earth is moving and the moon is moving, we never see any other face. So another convenient explanation. But in reality, the reason we never see the dark side of the moon is because it doesn't exist. There isn't another side of the moon. It's just a translucent, it's not densely physical because you can see through it. There's been pictures taken of stars being seen right through the moon. And the Royal Astronomical Society has recorded stars and planets like Jupiter have been seen through the moon. And they're scratching their heads recording this, like wondering what they've seen. And this is on record back in the 1700s up until today. You can see things through the moon. On a clear afternoon, you can see the blue sky through a waxing or waning moon. You'll see part of the moon illuminated, and then part of it, you'll see the blue sky right through it. Even some of the craters, as they call them on the moon, that's potch marks. Nobody knows exactly what they are. It's strange looking. Calling them craters, though, is a foregone conclusion because you don't know that that's what they are. Especially, as I'm saying, some of these supposed craters, you can see the blue of the sky through the crater. So it's obviously not something that's densely physical. You can see through it. You can't see opposite faces from different places. And if it was a ball can't reflect light either. The only way that the moon could reflect light like they say it is if it was a flat or a concave surface. A convex surface can't project light, reflected light, the way it's claiming that the moon does.
Now, Occam's razor for a moment. If you and I are born and raised by, say, an isolated tribe in the Pacific, and you and I look at the horizon around us, we would think the Earth was flat if nobody told us the opposite. And if you saw an eclipse and the sun and moon look exactly the same, you would come to the conclusion that the two objects are the same size, wouldn't you?
That's right, exactly. And you wouldn't come to the conclusion that you were moving either. They say that we're spinning 1,000 miles an hour. We're going around the sun 67,000 miles per hour. There's no way you would think of that because it's nowhere evident anywhere that we're moving. Instead, you'd look up and you'd see that the sun, moon, and the stars are all revolving perfect circles around us. And that geocentric common sense perspective is what you would assume the truth was, until some liar with a NASA logo on his shirt, a little forked snake tongue, if you notice, that's what the logo is. They come with their little forked snake tongue and they say, "Oh, silly peasant, you're not motionless with everything revolving around you. The sun is motionless and you're revolving around it, silly." So what they do is they set themselves up as the authority. That's what every liar does. That's why psychopaths, they get this thing called the duper's delight. They love to pull a fast one on you. Not only is it fun for them, it's hilarious for them to pull this biggest of all jokes on people. It also sets them up as the authority. So not only do we give them all of our money for these fake CGI pictures and whatnot, we also go to them like they're the priests of metaphysics as well, because they're the only ones who can peer into the universe and tell us exactly what's going on here. So people like Carl Sagan and Neil deGrasse Tyson, in actuality, they're just Freemasons lying to you, stealing your money. But you think that they're like the priests of science telling you knowledge of the universe that nobody but them has access to. So they set themselves up as the authority by telling this biggest of all lies, and then everybody has to ignore their common sense and their own experience and experiments and go to these guys and ask them what the truth is. And they just feed you a bill of good lies all the time. And that's where we're at today. We've all been brainwashed with these excuses of why the Earth's curving and spinning and all this nonsense. Like you said, if you were left to your own devices, if you were born in some tribe somewhere, there's no way you'd ever come up with this heliocentric ball idea. The Earth is clearly flat and motionless to anyone that's ever walked the Earth and not heard a NASA spokesperson.
Speaking of the Earth moving so fast, when you look at a quiet pond, the water is so calm, you drop a pebble, and you see the rings start circulating wide as if there's no movement around us. And this leads me to the next question. The tides. Why low and high tide happening only in the ocean and not in lakes or streams?
Right. So water is another great proof of the flat Earth and disproof of gravity. So water, the natural physics, is to always find and remain level. If water is contained somewhere and let go, it will flow in all directions to find the easiest way to find its own level again, and then it'll remain still. So how is it possible that all of the oceans on the Earth are actually curved bodies of water curving around the Earth like this? That's not the natural physics of water to do that. They claim that gravity does this, but they can't show you any example of water gravitized around some ball and just sticking there the way they claim it does. And they also claim that the gravity of the moon somehow causes the ocean tides to lift up towards the moon, and that's what's causing the tides, as you said. But like you said, why are not the seas and rivers and lakes and other inland waters, why are they not similarly affected? Why aren't those bodies of water having tides and being lifted towards the gravity of the moon? Well, obviously it's because this explanation is bunk, just like every other explanation they give us. It's impossible that tides are caused by the moon's gravity. Otherwise, all water would be similarly affected. The reason it's not is because gravity doesn't exist, and this is a nonsense explanation.
Now, let me ask you about, and this might be a left-field question, so I'm okay if you don't know what to say. Let me ask you about ancient maps for a moment. You may know that Christopher Columbus, Cristobal Colon, his real name, was not an Italian fisherman from Genoa, Italy. He, in fact, was a Sephardic Jew from Catalonia, Spain, who had to hide the fact he was Jewish because that same year, in 1492, Jews were being kicked out of Spain. So, do you think he had of course he lied in order to get the funding from the kingdom. Do you think he had ancient maps in his possession?
Right, absolutely. It's a huge lie that ancient civilizations never interacted with each other before Columbus, or that we never knew that there was a whole other continent out there. This knowledge was certainly suppressed, and it was kept to the royal class and the aristocracy. But Columbus, of course, he knew, and there's no way that he, the story that he was trying to find India, and to this day they still call Native Americans Indians because he was expecting to find India. I mean, what a stupid story that we hang on to this very day. There's been paintings of white men. There's been symbols like the cross and swastika and other ancient symbols have been found. The Buddha, sculptures of Buddha have been found in America. So the languages, you name it, there's inexhaustible proof that the East and West hemispheres knew about each other and had interacted for thousands of years before Columbus. There may have been the Dark Ages. There may have been a time when there was limited interaction, followed by this new breaking out they talk about. But as far as truly ancient civilizations, they were worldwide.
And coincidentally, right on our website, we have a blog entry titled, "Where Did Chief Joseph Get His Mesopotamian Tablet?" A gift that he gave, one of the generals when he came to America. And how did he get that? It's an artifact dated back to 2042 BC. So obviously the Assyrians, the Babylonians had interactions with this world. The pyramids, all of a sudden, the pyramids popped at the same time, and they more or less had the same architecture style, when we in fact did not have any kind of interaction, and we had to believe that Christopher Columbus discovered or rediscovered or actually opened the route from Europe to America.
Right. Yeah, there's pyramids all the way from South America to India to China, huge stone obelisks and, megaliths that we couldn't make today are found all over the world. Yet we're assuming that these cultures never had any connection. They all independently came up with this technology so advanced that we can't replicate it today. I doubt it. I think it's more likely that ancient civilizations were very evolved and they were worldwide. They communicated, and we have since devolved while being told that we're the pinnacle of evolution and that your iPhone is the best thing that's ever existed.
Not only that, but I had a chat with the Dogon tribe years ago, and they get mad when you tell them, when you see Ancient Aliens on TV, which, by the way, folks, find out who owns the History Channel, and then you'll know what I'm saying here. But they get mad when anybody says, oh, they must have been built by aliens. When in fact, I think we had a very, very smart civilization, perhaps a universal language, a universal mind, thousands of years ago. Something happened, and now we just can't replicate what they did, even with today's technology.
Right. Our wise ancient human heritage is so removed from us now that it's alien. We think of, with the pyramids and the megaliths and all these things being so beyond us that they are alien to the human race. But this could be just that we've devolved and adapted so far away from how our ancient ancestors were that it's become alien to us. That doesn't mean that humanity had to have been visited by some other species to be able to construct the kind of things that we used to. It just means that our consciousness may have shifted and we've gone more towards metal technology, say, than internal consciousness technology. People of the past, for instance, in a Mithraeum, an ancient temple to Mithra, they look like a modern Catholic church with pews and an altar and the priest at the front gives you communion. But in a Mithraeum, you get sacred mushrooms and oils, and then you lay down in these saltwater tubs. So the pews are like saltwater tubs. They're all connected, and you have a midnight mass. That's where this comes from. And there are holes cut in the ceiling over each of the tub. So everyone is ingesting a hallucinogenic, psychedelic, entheogenic substance. And then for thousands of years this existed, they said they communally, astrally traveled to the stars through those holes in the ceiling. So they used sensory deprivation by using these saltwater tubs and psychedelics to induce an out-of-body experience. And by doing it collectively, they said they were collectively able to travel to the stars, and they had communication with these astral beings, astral meaning star beings, aliens. So in thousands of years ago, we have whole religious sects, cults dedicated to going out of your body and traveling to the stars with this type of internal consciousness technology and having interactions with spirit beings, aliens, whatever you want to call them. These same beings that shamans, ayahuasqueros in the Amazon claim to see now. They'll do paintings and they'll show you UFOs and beings like Nordics and reptilians and greys coming out of these things. And they say these are the beings, the astral beings on an interdimensional plane that they're seeing when they take these entheogens. So the whole alien extraterrestrial idea actually has been around for thousands of years, but not in a physical sense, like you get in a physical metal craft and try to go to another planet, but rather an internal technology where you can separate your spirit, your consciousness from your physical body, and upon doing so, direct your consciousness towards the stars, and then be able to literally travel there and talk to beings that are from there. So if this is possible, and I've experienced things that are similar to this, and I've had friends that have experienced things like this, if it's possible to use these, plant technologies or these things like sensory overload, sensory deprivation to separate your spirit and communicate with other beings, well, this is an advanced technology that almost doesn't exist anymore today. Almost nobody knows that it exists at all. The few people that do are somewhere in the Amazon. They have no idea that the Earth is supposed to be a spinning ball with extraterrestrial planets and aliens visiting us from them. They'd tell you now, man, just drink this ayahuasca. You'll see them. it's a totally different phenomenon.
As opposed to here in the United States, where all those plants are illegal. Makes you wonder that they don't want you to start looking outside the box.
Right. And DMT, the most powerful psychedelic on Earth, is actually naturally secreted in our pineal glands. So a lot of people will have a full-on DMT trip in the middle of the night. They won't even know what's going on. They'll think they're being abducted by aliens or something, or see UFOs. And in reality, they've just had an endogenous DMT trip. They've experienced the same thing that those ayahuasqueros in the Amazon are experiencing without knowing that there's been a drug being taken. So that's another thing. As well as I think the government has seen photos of flying, like planes with a flying saucer appendage to make them look like they're a saucer, but they're really just a plane. So between Hollywood and these government crafts, I think they're trying to turn this internal, interdimensional entity UFO phenomenon into a extraterrestrial physical phenomenon. They want you to think it's nuts and bolts, so you can knock on it and hear an echo, whereas the actual technology is internal. It's consciousness based.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned DMT. Folks, listen to my interview with Dr. Rick Strassman, the spirit molecule. He's the only doctor in New Mexico, actually, who was able to bring this to academia. He tried DMT with his control group, and the findings were incredible. Some of the people went with one was a doctor and then changed careers because of what he found there, and now it's an incredible story. But what about planets? What if we are on, and this is the part that to me was difficult for me to disembrace from Eric, when I see these alleged circles from a telescope and you see Saturn with the beautiful rings around them and Jupiter, I would think, okay, if I'm seeing all these planets around, then we must be around. Isn't this the most difficult to explain?
Yeah, that's another supposed proof of the ball Earth, is they say, well, all the other planets are spheres, so the Earth should be a sphere. So first of all, Earth is a plane, not a planet. You just add a T on the end, and now they claim that this word, which means flat, that's what plane means, now they claim you add a T and it means a big ball spinning in space. So everyone says, oh, see, it's a planet. So Earth's a planet. So this is just add a T to the end of the word, and people are ready to buy on the model. And the other thing they've done is given us CGI pictures and videos of Jupiter and Mars and Venus and all the other planets, and they're spinning spheres. But the planets have been known for thousands of years as wandering stars. If you look out tonight at the planets, you can't tell the difference between what they call stars and what they call planets. They all just look like little dots of light in the sky. That's another interesting point. If planets are just terrestrial terra firma, as they say, why are they shining so just as brightly as stars, which they claim are suns? Another interesting side point. But anyway, the wandering stars are called so because their motions are not relative to each other, like the other constellations stay fixed. The wandering stars kind of wander around the heavens. So they're no different than the other stars except for their relative motions. But in NASA videos, they'll show you a star looks like a big nuclear furnace of sun, and they'll show you the planets look like whatever. They are all different, but they're all balls. Through an amateur telescope, the best telescope you can get, all the planets just look like a circle of light. The rings around Saturn just look like a halo of light. If you type into Google or even on NASA's official website, real planet footage, actual footage of the planets, something like this, you won't find any. It's all CGI. There is no actual footage of planets. They're just lying to you once again. So if you look out in a telescope, you look at the planets yourself, you'll see that they're barely different from stars. That, Mars, it's just a little circle with a little red tint to it, and there's no shading or anything that would suggest that it's a sphere. Yet when you look at the Hubble telescope show you Mars, it's clearly a sphere. The shading, everything's all in clear view. But again, the Hubble doesn't exist. It's just a CGI image, and they're claiming it's being taken from some advanced telescope that's floating around in outer space and sending them images back with their million-mile internet. This million-mile internet, that's what they claim that they send this epic satellite footage back from 1,000,000 miles away. They've got internet that works at 1,000,000 miles.
Wait a second. This is another one, right? We see our Milky Way galaxy so beautifully depicted in these pictures. But the first thing that I think of is, when did the camera get there?
Right?
Nobody's questioning that.
They'll show you a picture of the galaxy and all these stars, and they'll put a little arrow and say, "You are here," some random thing. You can do a Google image search of that, and you'll find the "you are here" thing look totally different in every image.
But let's say that from here to the next, I believe is Alpha, what's the name? No, Alpha Centauri. I'll find the other one. The closest galaxy to us, Alpha Proximus, I believe it is. Anyway, it's how many light years? 4 point some light years away. So if, let's say, it's 1 light year away from us, or 10 light years away from us, and we had this camera that I don't know how he got there to be able to do a selfie on the galaxy, how many light years would it take to get back to us? Wouldn't it be several generations down the road that will be receiving that? Therefore, it's impossible that that picture was even taken?
Right? Absolutely ridiculous. Just like all their other explanations, but they need it to make it fit. So the closest star has to be 4.2 trillion light years away, 25 trillion miles away, to make their faulty math fit, because we don't see parallax. If we're actually moving 200 million miles through space in 6 months of time from one side of the sun to the other side of the sun, as they claim, then as Danish astronomer Tycho Brahe said back in the 1600s when this model was first being introduced, he said, well, you'd see parallax. If we're supposedly moving hundreds of millions of miles around the sun, then the stars relative to each other should change. But they don't. They stay stuck in their constellations year after year, century after century. They are, exactly the same. So it's impossible that, as in their model, we're actually spinning around the sun's spinning around the galaxy spinning around the universe. If that was the case, the night sky should never look the same 2 nights in a row, especially not 2 years in a row or 2 centuries in a row. The night sky should be wildly different, and the positions of the stars relative to one another should all be wildly different. The constellations shouldn't be able to exist. We shouldn't be able to make these constellations and stories for thousands of years about their revolutions over us if that's what was actually going on. The reason the constellations stay fixed is because they are fixed, and they're moving over us in a circular anti-clockwise pattern. And the reason why they have to say the closest one is 25 trillion miles away is because they say we're going 200 million miles around the sun. So they'll show you these huge formulas with math equations there's no way anyone's going to understand. And the math fits. See, as long as the stars are 25 trillion miles away, you can go 200 million miles and the relative position will seem the same because it's negligible. It's so much bigger. So that's why they come up with these ridiculously huge distances and numbers, is so that the math works in their model and so that the numbers are just so big that you can't question it. You're never going to get there. They're never going to get there either. But they can lie to you and give you CGI and you'll believe it. So,
oh, by the way, it was Andromeda, the closest galaxy to us. But when I heard this, that we're actually steady and we're basically the center, I felt a little bit ethnocentric, a little bit arrogant to say that we are. Is it bad to feel this way?
Yeah, we've definitely been brainwashed not to feel this way. Mm-hmm. They tell us that we're just, they say there's 1 septillion planets that they've discovered. So there's billions and billions, trillions and trillions of planets, and Earth is not special. And they just found Earth 2.0. Did you find that? A couple of months ago, yes. They came up with some new planet they found, which mysteriously looks like CGI once again. And it's got water, and it looks like Earth, and it could sustain human life. And so this is what they want you to think. They want you to think you're not special. They want you to think you're an accident. That's what this Big Bang non-God cosmology is all about.
Well, isn't a Big Bang the equivalent of you and I throwing a chalk on a board and expecting that the word God would appear?
Right. It's the equivalent of having a huge explosion take place, and when the dust settles, everything you see on Earth is here. It's the equivalent of seeing a laptop computer in the middle of the forest and assuming that it just came there by accident for no reason, and no intelligence, no consciousness was involved in its creation. That's part of this big deception. That's what they want you to think. They've actually got a huge segment of the population believing that the entire Earth, the entire physical universe comes from nothing. And consciousness, intelligence, somehow evolved out of the random accident. So obviously, we're living in an intelligently designed place here. Obviously, consciousness had to pre-exist the physical universe for the beautiful, complex, diverse physical universe to even come into existence at all.
Thought precedes matter.
Absolutely. And that's what all religious and spiritual systems throughout history have said this, but the new science religion says the opposite. The new science religion says matter comes first and thought comes out of that somehow. Stupid matter evolves thought and intelligence out of it. But you can see the beauty of nature, the complexity of your internal, emotional, and intellectual life. There's no way that just happened as a random explosion. And
the golden mean, the Fibonacci sequence everywhere.
Absolutely. It's not only is design intelligent, it's so intelligent that our human mind can't possibly comprehend it. So instead of admitting that and being a lowly human created by a highly intelligent creator, the new science religion lets you think that you're the pinnacle of evolution, you're a god, you're the best thing that ever walked, the universe, and that God doesn't need to exist whatsoever. So that's the metaphysical angle that this whole conspiracy is attacking us at. It's making us think, like you said, we're not special. And when somebody presents you with the idea that, hey, you're actually the center point of the universe, everything in the cosmos revolves around you, the Earth and us humans particularly, the most intelligent of the intelligent designers' designs, we are special.
Now, let me speculate for a moment. Let's say you and I are mice, and we're dropped in a cage or a glass container. The first thing we do is look for the exits. But after a while, we give up, and this is our habitat. Well, you have all these animals in certain reserves in Africa, and they stay within those parameters. They start looking, and when they find out that they can't escape, they just give up and they coexist, if you will. But in our case, if we live in a flat Earth and there are other puddles out there, it's innate in us to be able to find that exit. Because let me speculate here for a moment. We discuss the alien theory all the time. What if instead of extraterrestrials, we have interterrestrials coming from, instead of many light years away, coming from just a few thousand miles away from other puddles, and maybe those civilizations have evolved enough, and what we see in the skies, sometimes reported by thousands of people, are simply tourists taking a look at us and going back home, and we just simply are not allowed to visit them. That's just my speculation. What do you say about that?
Yeah, that's another possibility. If the Earth is infinite, then there could be other places beyond the Antarctic ice. Like I said, we don't know, so it's open to speculation. However, I tend to lean towards the model that the ancients talked about, which is that the aliens are actually astral beings from the stars, and that they're interdimensional. It's more of a consciousness-based thing than an extraterrestrial physical thing from some other puddle pond on the infinite flat plane. I tend to think that there's probably an enclosed system of some sort based on the movement of the stars. If it was an infinite plane, the movement of the stars would have to have a new explanation. And that these beings are not physical as they've been presented to us by Hollywood and these government UFO crafts and stuff. I think they're non-physical. They may have physical properties or be able to manifest physically in some way, but I think their nature, just like our inherent nature, is non-physical. It's consciousness-based.
I just believe more because of all the people that I've spoken to who have said that they have seen them manifest physically in physical craft. I lend more credence to the fact that if we have other puddles, that they may be coming around these puddles as opposed to 20 light years away, which to me, of course, it's beyond our comprehension. Seems like an impossibility.
That's true. Yeah, I would definitely buy the puddle theory over the extraterrestrial bodies theory.
Now, why are citizens of our country flying over oceans without the safety net of GPS? G for global. Without the safety of GPS, of course, no one knows where we are. And the GPS system was built by the U.S. Department of Defense. It has a huge deliberate gap in the southern hemisphere only. Why? I'm concerned about my loved ones and my fellow citizens, Eric.
Right. Now, why is it called GPS and not EPS, Earth positioning? Not just another subtle indoctrination into the globe. Yeah, some of the flights in the southern hemisphere, like when they go over the oceans, for some reason, the GPS just shuts off.
That's right.
This could be because there are no satellites and it's just ground-based. So there's certain place in the southern oceans that don't have towers that can reach them. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that they just don't want this to be exposed. And if you see how long it takes flights to traverse the southern hemisphere and the paths that they're taking, where they're actually coming up into the northern hemisphere and then back down to the southern hemisphere, because what they're really doing is just taking a straight shot across the flat Earth instead of going, around the ball as they claim they're doing. This is another reason. So it could be because they're having technological problems making the thing go all the way over the flat Earth, or it could be because they just don't want the deception to be exposed. So as a result, like you said, they're putting your loved ones in danger so that their conspiracy doesn't become in danger.
Here's another thought to ponder. We know that governments really don't rule. The corporation rules. Let's pick the number one industry in the world, oil. Let's pick one, Exxon, Mobil, whatever. Wouldn't they have gone down to Antarctica to start drilling or finding more resources? Do you think wealth is being hidden?
Right. Yeah. There's obviously more land down there than we've been told. So there's more land being hidden. If Admiral Byrd is to believe, it's a gold mine down there of natural resources that corporations would certainly want to go down and invest in. But we've got these Arctic and Antarctic treaties that have been signed so that they're not allowed to do so. But that begs the question, then why have these things been signed and why aren't they going down there anyway and just saying, screw the treaty? There's got to be something big there. I mean, like you said, that it's patrolled. There's military vessels that won't let you go. Brooks Agnew, like you said, couldn't go. Rodney Clough, he's a hollow earther, tried to go to the North Pole. He got turned around by military vessels. So they want to keep you in the middle of the flat Earth. They don't want or the middle latitudes. They don't want you to go to the very middle, the center, the North Pole, and they don't want you to go to the edges, Antarctica. They keep you in the middle ring, as it were, the Middle Earth of the Lord of the Rings. It's interesting. There's a mountain in that, the latest Lord of the Rings movie, and that's where they rule from. So the North Pole would obviously be, if it's at the center of the flat Earth, the most strategic location to own. Just like in the Lord of the Rings, so the one ring to rule them all would be the central ring, and the outer ring, they keep us from that. And then the middle ring between the central and outer rings, that's where we're allowed to go. We're like the mice in the lab, like you said, and what they've done is they've put us in a maze. They've put television screens all around the mice showing them that their prison has no walls. It's a ball. You can just keep going around it. And so the mice don't even think to try to find the edge, because there isn't one. They don't try to think to find the inner or outer extremity, because there isn't one. You're on a sphere.
Just give us bread and circus and we'll be happy.
Every point is equal to every other point. So there's no point that encourages exploration more than any other. So it's ingenious what they've done there. And then if any intrepid free thinkers get beyond their propaganda and actually try to traverse into the inner or outer rings, they've got those guarded by a heavy hand. So first they've got the soft method by brainwashing you. Then they've got the hard method by physically enforcing the boundaries. So they don't have to physically enforce the boundaries from 99.9% of the population because they're totally hypnotized by the model they've been presented with.
Because they know that if we find out, we know that if you tell a lie once, all your truths become questionable. But again, talking about the corporation, if we went to the moon in 1969, logic tells me that moon travel would have been commercialized, and by 75, 85, or 1995, trips to the moon would have been a reality. It hasn't happened. This would be exploited by the highest level. That's how business works. But if in 6 months from now, Eric, the Earth is on the other side of the sun, shouldn't we be seeing a different set of stars than the ones we see today? 6 months prior wouldn't be visible because they would be behind the sun. How is it possible that we see the same stars when we're on the other side of the, 6 months from now?
Yeah. And not only that, but then 6 months from then, we're not just back to the same spot like they're kind of trying to claim, because they say that we're also spinning through the galaxy and through the universe. So, there's so many spiraling contradictory motions going on that the night sky should never be the same twice. Even after a full year rotation, now the whole solar system is supposed to be at a different point in the universe. So why is it that you can literally put a mark in your backyard, set up a telescope, and watch the meridian of a star going across? 6 months later, it will go across the exact same meridian line. 6 months later, once again, nothing changes. We haven't moved at all. And that's the reason. It doesn't fit their model whatsoever. If we were really going through all these contradictory motions, you shouldn't be able to film star trails at all. The star trails should be going not in circles, but in some lopsided shape because of the many spiraling motions that are being undergone. But in reality, you can point your camera towards the North Star, and every star goes in perfect circles around it because it's the stars that are moving, not us.
Do you see I'm sorry, finish your statement.
If we were moving, you'd have to see through the ball, Earth, for part of the rotation, to see the stars through, like, for instance, south of the equator, you can still see Polaris. But on a ball model, you'd have to be looking through the bulge of the Earth up into the sky to be able to see it. So it doesn't fit in their model. I mean, in their model, the sky is actually in every direction. So if you saw some crazy homeless guy digging a hole and you asked him what he was doing, and he said, I'm trying to find the sky, that's not crazy based on what they're telling you. That's legitimate. You should be able to dig down long enough and get to more sky. Right? But we all know that the sky is up and the Earth is down. There really is an up and down in nature. They're trying to claim that everything's relative. We're on a ball, so there is no up, really. And that the sky is both up and down and side to side. It's everywhere. And, they say that there is no up and down and that gravity just pulls things to the center. So someone in Australia, even though they're supposedly hanging upside down on a ball, gravity sucks their feet in, and the sky above their heads, the reason it's slightly different than the sky above someone's head at the North Pole is because the sky is around them 360 degrees. But in fact, the sky is only above us. And the reason you see slightly different stars is because your perspective isn't infinite. You can't, if you're at the North Pole, Polaris is directly above you. You look straight up. It's right there. Now you go southwards from there, and you look behind you, and you'll notice Polaris is slowly going down on the horizon. Just like anything that goes away based on perspective, starts when it's right over you and tends towards the horizon until it gets beyond your view, and then it's disappeared. But that doesn't mean that it's now like in some other area of the 360-degree space. It's still above you in the sky. It's just gone beyond your perspective. Same with the sun. People say, but I see the sun set and it looks like it's just going down under the horizon. How do you explain that? Again, it's perspective. The sun is not going down under the horizon. You can see when the sun is setting, oftentimes clouds high above the sun are being lit from above. And you can see shadows from above. Yet the sun is below the cloud. Why is that? because the sun's not below the cloud, of course. The sun is above the cloud, but it's retreated so far off into the distance that just like lamps on a street, they get smaller and smaller as they go away from you. They tend towards the horizon. They're not actually getting shorter. They're just seeming that way. And the sun is not actually setting and going below the horizon. It just seems that way as it gets further and further away from you.
And what about when you see a cloud and you see the rays coming from that cloud only, but none of the others? And we're allegedly 92.7 million miles away from the sun. Shouldn't the entire sky be showing the clouds showing the rays?
That's right. So if the sun is 93 million miles away, then all the rays of sunlight should be hitting the Earth at exactly the same angle. Yet you can see, like you said, rays coming from a cloud dispersing in like 60-degree patterns and showing that the light source must be very close, just above the clouds. And their explanation for this, they call them crepuscular rays. They say, oh, well, it's this phenomenon where the light hits the cloud and somehow it disperses and makes it look like it's coming from a center point right above the clouds, but it's actually 93 million miles away. Trust us, trust us.
Absolutely. And folks, if you don't want to entertain the flat Earth, note how I don't say believe. I say entertain, but at least question that if Antarctica is just barren land, just ice as far as the eye can see, why are there so many international laws preventing you from crossing? I mean, honestly, if it was just pure ice, we probably would be dead if that's what really is there. But if it was me, I would say, Mel, Eric, have at it. Go there, camp, do whatever you need to do. But I wish, Eric, with all these GoFundMe campaigns that you see on Facebook on a daily basis, if we put everybody together, do you think that we could create an independent institution that allowed scientific research by independent researchers in Antarctica?
Absolutely. As this deception spreads, people are going to create these kind of organizations. People are going to do experiments. People are going to send balloons with cameras. People are going to fly there. People are going to sail there. Absolutely, it's going to happen. As this gets out, this is the truth, and it is getting out exponentially right now. The flat Earth is going crazy. If you haven't heard about it, I don't know where you've been. So in time, this is definitely going to happen. At the moment, it's still such a ridiculed idea that no, at the moment, I don't see such a thing happening. But in the very near future, absolutely. And once you go flat, there's no going back. Once you've seen the evidence, once you know that the Earth is flat, like you said, people believe they're on a spinning ball. I don't believe I'm on a flat, motionless plane. I'm aware that I'm on a flat, motionless plane. I've seen the evidence. I've debunked all the supposed proofs I was taught in school that I'm on a spinning ball. So it's not a belief-based thing. It's an evidence-based thing. They claim that they're doing science with a capital S at NASA, but they're really doing capital P pseudo-science and indoctrinating you into a bunch of excuses like crepuscular rays to tell you why the sun is clearly just above the clouds and not 93 million miles away. They tell you the Earth's leaning back 23.5 degrees to explain why you can see Polaris. They say it's pear-shaped to explain the southern anomalies. They'll give you excuse after excuse. As long as you're willing to listen to these liars, they'll keep lying to you, just like any liar. They're not gonna... and their science has become dogmatic, almost like religion. But don't you think that the goal should be to get there? We can talk about a dome, a firmament, all we want, but I think the first thing is to go beyond Antarctica first in an expedition in order to prove this, don't you think? And the North Pole. Like I said, they're keeping us from both of these areas. They don't want us to go to the North Pole. They don't want us to traverse as far south as we can. So they want to keep us in the middle. Don't go too far north. Don't go too far south. So I would say, do it. When your parents say what not to do, what do you want to do even more? When someone tells you you can't do something, what do you want to do even more? So as people figure this out, I hope that exploring, adventurous spirit does come out in humanity, and we decide to see this for ourselves. Because yes, once we have some video proof of some of this, it'll come out much quicker than with these, experimental proofs. You have to take some time to look into the experiments, the Aries failure and the different scientific experiments that have proven that the Earth is geocentric. Once we have video proof, say, of a dome or of a magnetic mountain at the North Pole or of Rahu eclipsing the sun or of any of these natural phenomena that go against their mythological spinning ball explanation, it's dying. The model's dying. The more proofs we get, the quicker it dies.
I mentioned Dr. Judy Wood at the beginning of the interview. She has a doctorate in interferometry, and I know you discussed the Michelson and Morley experiment, the Michelson interferometer. So I wonder what Dr. Judy Wood would say about this. Can you just quickly summarize what that experiment was about? Right.
Yeah, you mentioned Judy. I like Judy Wood's work as well. She's much like myself in that she's into the physical evidence. Some researchers, quote unquote, will take the testimony of Freemason Admiral Byrd and they'll create a whole, flat Earth series based on this testimony and a whole website claiming that we found a dome because Admiral Byrd apparently did. Actually, Admiral Byrd didn't even say so. It's all his speculation. You might know which flat earther I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. So to me, I'm more into physical evidence like Judy Wood is. And that's why people are against her, just like people in the flat earth community are against me, because the shills, the controlled opposition that's in the 9/11 movement, they don't want you to look into physical evidence and the kind of things that Judy Wood's talking about.
So you know the story.
Absolutely. Just like the controlled opposition in the flat earth movement, they don't want you to talk to me.
The best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves, Lenin.
And they've been doing it. Exactly. They have the Flat Earth Society all set up with their controlled opposition, fake explanations for everything that turns people off from the Flat Earth because they give incorrect explanations for things. They have people like Mark Sargent, who I was just talking about, who come in to obfuscate and muddy the waters and throw in hologram moons and other nonsense to make the Flat Earth subject seem crazy to neophytes. And they won't talk about certain issues like the Holocaust or the Jews or Freemasons, and they try to pin it just on NASA. It's only NASA. Don't look behind NASA at the fact that it was all Freemasons who started NASA and started the whole ball earth deception. And don't look behind Freemasonry and see that it's Judaism that started Freemasonry from the get-go. So who's actually behind the spinning ball model? The Jews. And this is the main thing they don't want you to know. And this is the main thing I'm demonized for. And the reason why I'm a pariah flat earther, but I'm also the only leading flat earther because all the others are shills that won't tell you the real truth. They're just going to get to a certain point, honeypot and gatekeep you there, and then throw in some hologram moons and other nonsense to throw off neophytes. They're not going to take you to the actual culprits, the actual Jews and Freemasons who started this up from the get-go, because they know it's coming out, and they're fine with throwing NASA under the bus once this gets out, but they don't want you to go to the true seat of power, the true pinnacle of the capstone, the Jewish Freemason power, and they know that that's what's going to happen if I'm the one that exposes it, because I'm the only one exposing who's doing it.
Of course, and you call anti-Semite. You say, oh, the sky is blue. Oh, you must be anti-Semite. But that doesn't take away the fact that the sky is blue.
Does it? I think the JDL might have a different opinion of that. Yeah, the term like anti-Semite, conspiracy theorist, flat earther, Holocaust denier, they come up with these to pigeonhole researchers so that instead of looking into it, they can just say a term like this and have a whole media, machine to parrot this term and to say it in hushed tones like you're someone who should never be listened to and it's a position that should never be considered. And, the Jews are victims. They were, the Holocaust, everyone just don't criticize them. Okay, if you do, you're anti-Semite, right? You're not anti-Jew, you're anti-Semite, which is another,
Then you don't like Arabs or what's the other language? The dead language, Aramaic. So you're against all of them, not just Jews.
That's it. Well, anti-Jew is just to the point. Yeah. Right. They don't want you to know what's actually going on here. So they create a new label that sounds like there's something wrong with it. Sounds like you're against a race. And that's another card the Jews play, is claiming that they are a race. It's just a psychopathic tribe with an idea, a cult ideology that's existed for thousands of years, where they believe themselves to be superior to everyone outside of their religion. They claim to be God's chosen people, and that they were put here on earth to be masters, and that everyone else are just animals in human form to serve them. I mean, this is literal word for word from their holy book, saying that us goyim, as they call us, which means cattle, us cattle are only here, put in human form to better serve them. If we were animals, we wouldn't have, opposable thumbs and all the necessary things to be good servants. Sounds crazy, but it gets even deeper than this. I mean, they talk about how if a Gentile hits a Jew, the Gentile must be killed. If you steal something from a Gentile, it can be kept. If a Jew murders a Gentile, he must be killed. But if a Gentile, the other way around, if a Jew murders a Gentile, it's God's work. It's fine.
Well, when you say that they have been expelled 109 times, oh, you're an anti-Semite. Folks, once again, these are facts from the year 250 until it happened, 1948, actually. Why can't you question it? Why can't we just sit down and say, please, I have nothing against Jews because I know many of them, they're nice people. But why can't I sit down and ask why they were expelled 109 times from different locations? And they just say, oh, this is not true. I have a list right in front of me. Why is it so bad to ask the question?
Right. In 18 countries in Europe, it's illegal to talk about the Holocaust. Right. You can't, they'll call it
criminalized
revisionism if you point out evidence of the lack of a Holocaust, the lack of gas chambers, the lack of execution orders by Hitler. If you point out these things, you will be put in prison, and many researchers and authors have been put in prison under these laws. It's the only historical event that you are legally unable to talk about. Why? Because it reveals that they are lying to you about the Holocaust, and that they are the ones that are behind everything, literally wars, the banking system, the mainstream media, this ball earth deception, circumcision, kosher slaughter, meat eating in general, Semitic. The entire conspiracy, as Hitler knew, is Jewish in origin. That's where it comes from. And that's why Hitler is the most demonized person in history, because when you go up against the greatest liars in history and you lose, you're going to become the most lied about man in history. And that's what's happened to Hitler. And that's why the Holocaust is not allowed to be talked about anywhere in Europe. It's illegal. And that's why they don't want you talking about those 109 countries they've been kicked out. They'll just tell you those countries were all 109 of them, they were anti-Semitic.
Or they talk about the Holocaust, but they don't talk about Lenin and Trotsky, how many they killed.
Of course, they don't want you to know how many people, how many Christians, how many Gentiles the Jewish Bolsheviks killed, how many tens of millions were killed by Jews. They just want you to know this fake number of 6 million Jews they claim died in the fake Holocaust, so that you'll see them as perpetual victims. And Steven Spielberg will put out a new victimhood movie for everyone to see every year, and everyone will continue believing that the Jews are the most...
You mean like Schindler's List, the fictional movie?
Absolutely. Exactly. People think that this is, what actually happened. I recommend people view my documentary called Adolf Hitler versus the Jew World Order. And you'll see exactly what the Jews have been up to for the past couple thousand years, exactly why Hitler has become the most demonized man in history, and how close to the mark he was on pointing out who's in control of this worldwide deception, this huge conspiracy that's convinced us of a spinning ball Earth and has placed Rothschild central banks in all but 3 countries in the world now that are under Jewish usury. The reason that now the United Nations is taking power and we're starting to have this world Jewish government with 33 degrees of the flat Earth in their logo, this deception. It's huge. It's a huge conspiracy, multi-generational, and it's been going from the Jews through the Freemasons to NASA to, like I said, banking system, the mainstream media, Hollywood, completely created and maintained by Jews. And this is admitted. This is not like difficult information to find. They admit it themselves. The problem is that the mainstream media is so censored by these people that nobody's really talking about it, and anybody that does gets squashed instantly, both by terms like anti-Semite and other ridicule, as well as legally by their slush funds that they have to come after people like myself. And physically, if you get beyond that, they're not beyond murdering you if you say something beyond what they're going to allow.
I'm going to lean. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I know it's we've been here for more than 2 hours. So if you can give me a few more minutes, because I have a couple of questions left. Are you okay with that?
Absolutely.
I'm going to lean into discomfort for a moment before I ask you the question. I must confess that every time, Eric, I've conducted a presentation, the hecklers, the ones who have attacked me from every direction, have been Jewish. What am I saying that this overrepresented segment of the population doesn't like? But let me just ask you then, are they the ultimate gatekeepers of the truth?
Right. They're the ultimate arbiters of the conspiracy itself, and they and their minions are the gatekeepers, absolutely. And Freemasonry is the Gentile arm of Judaism, as they've said themselves. So they absolutely set up not only themselves, but they reach into Gentile culture and give us their psychopathic tribal ideologies and make the Freemasons think that they're part of this and they're special. And so whether you're a Jew or a Freemason or even someone outside of that, they've done such a good job, with Hollywood and whatnot. We think that the Jews are all comedians, you got, all celebrities, and then academia and intelligentsia, they dominate it, not because they're so much smarter than us, but that they're so much more organized and cunning than we are. The average person is maybe much smarter than the average Jew, but they're certainly not more cunning. Psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists. This is a psychological term for people who have no empathy, no compassion, no remorse. They're just predators. And this seems to be who gravitates towards Judaism and Freemasonry. And Judaism and Freemasonry also produces psychopaths and sociopaths because...
And less than 12% of the people living in Israel are true Semitic.
Right. Yeah, there's the Ashkenazi, Sephardic, Khazars, right? So there's, and of course, you got Ethiopian Jews, you got Jews of every nationality, race, color, creed, country, but they claim that they're a race. They when they want to, of course. Sometimes they'll claim not to be when that's convenient. But what they do is they say that anyone born of a Jewish mother, regardless of belief, remains a Jew for all of lifetime. And so through this weird idea, they're able to now be somewhere in between a religion and a race and to use religious and racial ideologies whenever it suits them. So they can be a race if they want to, a religion if they want to, they're whatever. But you can hear them talk about themselves. What they really are is a psychopathic tribal cult convinced that they are the supreme humans and all humans outside of their cult should serve them.
And they're always playing the victim, and I wonder why we send them billions of dollars every year, because last time I checked, they're pretty smart. And if you and I are born in Israel and we have several generations of father, grandfather, great-grandfather, but we're not Jewish, we're not Israeli citizens, we're just residents of the country.
Right.
Legal residents.
Germany's still paying reparations. They've been paying for like 100 years since World War I. They've been paying the Jews and other countries under Jewish control war reparations for what they didn't do. Hitler just wanted peace, and it was the Judea, the worldwide Jewry, which declared war on Germany, not the other way around. We've been fed all this propaganda that Hitler was trying to take over the world or something, when he was actually a response to Jewish Bolshevism and Stalin in Russia and everything he was doing. And he was taking over the world, him along with his Jew financiers and backers, and Hitler was trying to stop them. So in school, I never had a single unit on Stalin. Every single year, though, we had a unit on Hitler about how bad he was. I remember that explicitly. And, it wasn't until I got out of college that I finally started looking into it myself and found out, even if you believe every mainstream lie about Hitler, Stalin was way worse. Why don't we hear about him? Makes no sense.
And nobody says that, Marxist Jews were the ones responsible for, what happened in Russia, what became the Soviet Union. And I think when you think of the United States and the overrepresentation, when you look at the left, it's Marxist Jews, and in the right we have Zionist Jews. But let me read this quickly here. This is from Dr. Richard Sauter. He is, a PhD who wrote a book about deep military underground bases. He told me this, quote, 2 days prior to the enactment of the German Constitution on 23 May 1948, a secret treaty, I don't speak German, the Geheimer Staatsvertrag was signed, which gave complete Allied control over electronic and print media, film, culture, and education until the year 2099. Keep a few generations brainwashed, Eric, for 150 years, and no one will ever remember what really happened. A very clever plan.
Very clever. Absolutely. They're cunning. If you've ever known a psychopath or a sociopath, you know that they are ridiculously good at getting revenge. They're amazing at getting you back at perceived slights. They view themselves as the eternal victim, and everyone around them has slighted them, and they're excellent at getting you back for whatever it is that they perceive that you've done to them. And you'll notice this in one of the main religions in the world today that we're talking about. They just constantly play the victim. But in reality, they're the perpetrator. But isn't that the way to do it?
Yeah, and when we think of flat Earth, we think like what people are saying probably, what do Jews have to do with this? Well, because, folks, there's a lot of truth that's being hidden from us for millennia. And you have to understand who controls publishing, who controls the media, who controls government. I have one question left. One question left here. David from Louisiana, I'm not going to read yours because I think we have already answered your question throughout the interview. But the last question, Mark from Landenberg, Pennsylvania. Hey, Eric. Allowing for the changing landscape that has brought our quote-unquote plain Earth to its current state, which quote-unquote flat Earth map, do you believe is the most accurate as verified to scale by recordable travel distances, and how do meteors, asteroids, and comets fit into the flat Earth model? Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, well, like we said earlier, I'm not sure any of the maps are totally accurate, though I would say the Gleason's map is probably one of the best ones to look into. And meteors, asteroids, comets, shooting stars, so many names for apparently the same thing. They're still a mystery to me. And, what stars are exactly is a mystery to me. What stars which shoot across the sky with a little tail across them and then burn up, what those are, that's a mystery. When they come down to Earth and they make a big fireball and then disappear, what is that? And then sometimes they have big craters on Earth which they claim are meteor impacts, but then there's no debris, there's no meteor rocks or anything left whatsoever. And there's actually gas pockets which have formed these same kind of things from under the Earth. So the mainstream explanation for what meteorites are is that there are these rocks floating in space that sometimes will come to the Earth and burn up or sometimes impact onto the surface. But I'm not seeing this happen. We've never recorded an actual explosion of a rock hitting the Earth. They've only showed us pictures of the aftermath, which looks, like I said, could be a geothermal gas pocket. You look that up on Wikipedia, they look exactly like the meteorite impacts. So I don't know how they can claim to tell the difference between these. And then with the lights in the sky shooting across the sky, this is a mystery to me. I mean, stars, they twinkle, they change color, green, blue, purple, red, and they're twinkling, like the song says, twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Well, I wonder because I'm legitimate. NASA doesn't wonder. They just give you bullshit explanations, and they'll tell you, well, the stars are distant suns trillions of miles away with their own planets and solar systems around them. So they give you an explanation, and you can hold on to that. But does it stand up to scrutiny? No. It's not a sun. I can see it changing color off my balcony, every night. How could it possibly be that? Why are they all the same size if they're distant suns of different sizes at varying trillions of miles? Why do they all look like little dots of light? They're giving us fake explanations so that we feel good, like we know the universe. We know what stars are. We know what meteors are. We have a map. We know what the Earth looks like. But then someone like me comes along and says, well, I'm not exactly sure of the correct map. I don't really know what stars are. I don't know where the edge of the flat Earth is. Oh, it's starting to sound dubious. This guy acts like he knows answers, but now he doesn't have answers like NASA does. NASA gives us all these concrete answers. This is it. People want to have answers for stuff that we can't know. And if somebody's willing to give them to you with a straight face and a nice logo and, you know, a uniform, and they say it, repeat it long enough and often enough, people will believe that instead of believing in a mystery, instead of waiting for physical evidence, instead of opening their minds and allowing it to be what it will be. They just close their minds off to the nearest liar that tells them they have all the answers.
And NASA is, you can look at the charter. This is not a lie. This is not speculation. It is a branch of the Department of Defense. And if they see anything that the population should not see, that's why they have to always send information to the Department of Defense first. But I have to say this before we end. Folks, you will never arrive at truth by accepting what other people tell you. You will only arrive at it by questioning everything you were ever told. Don't take anything as truth until you verify for yourself. Beyond Antarctica, what if it's utopia? What if it's Nazi fascism? I don't care. I just want to see it. Eric, I have a feeling our listeners will want you back in the future. And I know you discuss giants, the absence of dinosaurs, the illusion of nuclear weapons, stuff that we discuss here on the site, but we haven't done a show on that. So hopefully in the future you can be back to discuss more.
Sounds great, Mel. I'd love to do that.
How can people buy your books now? There are 5. I said 4, but you have 5 books now. How can people learn more about you? And even if they want to become members of your forum of the International Flat Earth Society.
Yeah, we're at ifers.boards.net, IFERS, the International Flat Earth Research Society. You can find links to my books and stuff there, as well as atlanteanconspiracy.com, my main website. All my books are on Lulu, as you're talking about. The publishing companies are all Jew and Mason owned, so I actually sent my first 2 books to over 200 publishers and literary agents and got 0 back. So I had to...
Not surprisingly.
Yes, I had to independently publish my first books, and then once I had success with that, I just said, well, forget it. I'm just going to independently do all of them. So now I've got 5 books all available from lulu.com, or you can get them from atlanteanconspiracy.com or IFERS. Half of them are free. You can get the PDFs. The other half are, $10, $20. You can help me out in the Flat Earth movement. A lot of my earnings goes right back into the Flat Earth. I just bought a big... Coolpix P900 camera. I'm going to do some more flat earth proofs with that, like I said. And yeah, I hope people will, if not join, at least peruse the forum at ifers.boards.net, and you'll find proof after proof that the earth is absolutely not a spinning ball.
I was very surprised when I saw all the commentaries on the Flat Earth Society book on Amazon, that all the people have given you positive remarks that, this is a very controversial topic that people, even me, who I consider myself to be open-minded, when I read the book, again, I'm not going to say I'm a flat earther, but I'm also going to say I don't live in a sphere, because if I can see a number of mountains from 80 miles away, something is wrong with what I've been told, and I'm gonna keep searching. I'm glad to have had Eric Dubay with us today. Eric, thank you so much for being part of Veritas.
Thanks so much, Bill.
You too. And that was Eric Dubay, discussing what it could possibly be, the biggest conspiracy of all. Are we living on a plane and not a planet? You decide. Eric has been grateful enough to accept a future invitation to discuss other topics overlooked even by alternative media. And I want to thank you, Veritas member, for making all of it possible. And Veritas members, remember, this coming Sunday is the deadline to receive your 1 month free on Sanitas. If you are an active Veritas member and subscribe to Sanitas, you will receive 4 months for the price of 3, but only until this coming Sunday. Don't wait and unlock your full potential. Go to sanitasradio.com and subscribe. And this week, I'll close with this. The truth is not for all men, but only for those who seek it. Thanks for listening. I'm Mel Fabregas. Until next week, be well.